Alrighty, so we got our mini project 1 here, which is also the rough draft of my honors project. So here we go. This is the Unity editor here, which is made for developing video games. We've got let's see, this is just a test map that I created right here, and I just found a free tile set on opengameart.org, and they had some nice grass tiles there. So I made a 10 by 10 grass square. That way I can get the game working perfectly as far as like tile selection, unit selection, moving units to different tiles, and attacking other units. And then really once the game is completely playable, then I would make a bit larger map. I was thinking about a 100 by 100 map, but then when I got to doing the math, it's like 10,000 tiles, and that would be incredibly time consuming. So I'll probably end up doing maybe 20 by 20. I'll have to look at it and see, because it's got to be large enough to accommodate 2 players and 2 armies there, but not so large to where it's just going to, the players are going to be lost in that gigantic map. But anyways, so we've got 100 grass tiles here. Got our main camera here, and this is the view that the player will actually see when they run this on their phone. Well, once they press the play button. But there's 2 basic sprites here. There's a knight and then a castle, and they don't actually do anything now. It's just kind of playing around with that, making sure I could find a sprite sheet that would be compatible with this tile size, and I'm just seeing how, getting something there so I can kind of play with moving units. But I've gotten tile selection down though for now, so we'll look at that. I've got a couple different scripts here, as well as zooming and panning around the map, using just like either the pinch to zoom or just swiping your finger across the screen. And I even have a basic UI. I guess we can switch to that. Let me go back to here. Look at the UI. I haven't implemented this unit like shop there yet, but it's the start screen here, and this actually has a white background when you run it, but it's just got a welcome there, and then this is a let's see, you select that. So then these are 2 text objects here, but they have a box collider on them, and I use the same basic code that I'll go over in a bit to determine whether or not the user tapped on a specific tile, to determine whether or not they tapped on one of these text objects. And what this will do, this functions as a button of sorts. So then you have the play button and the quit button, and this will actually close the game, and then the play button will take the player to this test map scene here. So let's see. So I named the tiles. It just took a little while, but I went through and named all the tiles. Using their like a sort of a coordinate system, like you would do for an array. So like this tile right here is 0, 0, and then 0, 1, and so on. And then when you go down here, it's 1, 0, and that same pattern continues on. And the numbers are always separated by an underscore. And I'm hopefully going to be able to use that to move units around to different tiles. But let's see. That should cover about everything as far as how the game looks. So, oh, and I did add some basic music that I found on the freemusicarchive.org, and it's pretty cool. It's like a kind of simple track there. It's called Celtic Warrior, and it sounded pretty cool for a game like this. So I attached that to the camera, and it's set up to where it will play that on a loop there. For now I had it on mute just because I was testing that at work off and on, and didn't want that to play every time I started it, but I'll guess I can unmute that and play it for a second. But this is kind of what it'll sound like when it starts. That was a pretty cool track. I'll probably find a couple more and set it up to where it'll alternate between them, maybe at random or just some predetermined loop. But that'll be later on when I'm kind of polishing everything up. But let's see. I'm gonna remute that. I don't forget. But let's see. Let's go ahead and switch over to the code. So two most basic scripts here. Did not comment those. Which one we go? So I went back through and commented all this code. Had forgotten to do that. So let's see. So this here is the play script, and this is called whenever the user touches that play text there that's on the UI. And I think Unity had some built-in like buttons, but they're just not as they don't look as good. Just as some basic text. So I wanted to do that because I feel like the text will be more customizable whenever I get into actually polishing the UI and making something that looks nice. But for now, it's just really bare bones UI. So let's see right here. We have this is called basically everything in Unity there. This update function will run continuously. I can't remember how often it runs, but it's definitely many times per second, and it checks the stuff, all the code in between in the update function here is executed that many times. So what this is listening for basically is if the user touches the screen, and then it will create a array at that point. And then this variable here is used to tell which game object that ray collides with, if any, of course. And then right here, if the ray does collide with an object, and that's used the physics class here. It's got a raycast method that'll do that. And let's see, then we have if that actually does happen, if this ray hits a game object, which in this case what we're concerned about are tiles, but this will trigger if it hits anything in the game, then it will check to see if the name of that game object is equal to the name of the game object that the script is attached to. And this I have attached this play script here to the actual play text there, but this same basic code, this same code applies to the quit script here, as well as the touch script. And I don't think I use it. Yeah, I don't use that on the pan zoom script. So so that I use that exact same code for all three of those. And then, but if it does collide with the game object that the script is attached to, then it'll do some action here. And in the case of the play button, it will switch the scene to the test map scene that I created there. Alright, so then the quit button here, so if the user touches the quit text object there, then it will close the game. And I don't think it immediately closes the game, but it takes them back to the home screen. And what I was reading about that is that eventually, after a little bit of time, Android will close the application. Because if you use the quit button and then you hit the icon for the application, it will start it over again. So it does restart it. It's just it still shows up in the application list. Okay, so then we have the pan zoom script. Oh, and I used a little article there on Stack Overflow where I had some people talking about that. I'll have to see if I can find that and include that maybe in like a sources list or something. But they had a nice little tutorial there for determining if specific touch there actually if someone actually touches a specific game object. Okay, so then, and this was this code here came from a YouTube video I watched on zooming and panning around the screen just using your fingers. And it actually implements pinch to zoom and then scrolling. So what we've got here, we have a vector 3, and this is called touch start, and this holds the user's touch, like whenever they touch the screen, and this will be used for scrolling. Then right here we have our minimum and maximum zoom values, and this is so that the user can't zoom out and zoom in incredibly far, incredibly small. And then we've got here, I don't even use that, but let's see right here. So in our update function, we have basically it's always listening here if the input, if the user touches the screen 2 times, or at least if it has to be 2 touches at the exact same time, then it'll get both of those touches, so the touch 0 and touch 1, and then this gets the previous position of those touches. And then what we can do, we find the previous magnitude between the touches and the current magnitude between the touches by using some math there with the positions, and we find the magnitude of that. And basically that's almost like drawing a line between those 2 touches, and then we calculate the difference, which is equal to the current magnitude minus the previous magnitude. And now we change the zoom, the camera zoom according to that distance there. So it's zoom, and we pass that a value of difference times 0.01. That way it doesn't get too crazy. And right here, the input or input.get mouse button down, even though they're not actually using a mouse, that will still register a touch as like a left click, or well, really just a mouse button down, which could apply to any of those. So it still works, and that actually prevents the user. Let's see, how does that? Yeah, that actually prevents this bit of code from triggering over and over and over if the user holds their finger on the screen. So this will only happen once until the user lifts their finger and then touches the screen again. But we get the touch start is set equal to the initial position of, or at least their first touch there on the screen. And then now we have another if statement here, and what happens is this can trigger as many times as over and over as long as the user is touching the screen. And what this will do is it'll store the direction, it'll calculate the direction here as touch start minus another vector here, which is we use a screen to world point method, and this will find vector 3 of the position of the user's finger later on. So then this will find a direction there, and then we move the camera in that direction, and that allows them to scroll around. Now we've also got a zoom method here, and what this does, it will change the camera's orthographic size, and it does that by using this clamp method here. Then it will clamp a specific calculation there between 2 values, which are our minimum and maximum zoom values. And we calculate the difference there in orthographic size as the current orthographic size minus the increment passed to the zoom method. Let's see if I can get through the rest of this before screencast times me out though. So now we've got the isSelected variable, and this is a public variable, so all other scripts can actually see this. Which is pretty useful for some other things later on. But what we do, we use that same bit of code to tell if the user actually touches the game object, which in this case is a grass tile. And if the tile is already selected, we'll toggle that, and now it's deselected. But if the tile is not selected, then we call a method in the touch actions script, which really just contains some static methods for useful actions like this. And what we'll do, we'll deselect the currently selected tile, and then we'll select this tile. And that order is important there, otherwise it would deselect this tile. Alright, so then, and this is just a basic test to demonstrate that it's working. It'll change it either black or to its default color, depending on whether it's selected or not. So then here's the touch action script, and this has just got some basic stuff here, like this gets the selected tile, or well, this will deselect the selected tile, and that relies on this method, getSelectedTile. Based on the naming convention, I can actually search through all the game objects, or at least all the tiles, as if it was an array, using GameObject.find. And then what it'll do, it will return the selected tile, or null, if there is no selected tile. And now this will get the selected tile, and if it's not null, then it will deselect that tile. and that comes into the public value. But I think that's all the time I'm going to have there is screencast.